Hello and welcome to another episode of the texture series, and here in the theoretical part we talk today about corners. Think around the corner and what I have in mind with that. When you are new to 3D, or if you have done animations and not so much texture work and so on, then you have maybe encountered an area when we talk about just a wall here, for example, with bricks and all of that. It's pretty simple to do. But in the moment you hit here the corner of the building or something like that, this is the part that becomes the least amount of love normally. Exactly here. Just put the finger on the wound. And of course, this area here creates more work. And even if it is that small, creates more work maybe than to cover the whole building in bricks in one step, for example. And I know I'm not out of the world. I know it's always time. It's the budget. It's whatever the reason is why it doesn't become a lot of love. The first thing where it fails to get this attention is, of course, when you capture the stuff. So to just go ahead and create maybe from this area here now a tileable texture is a good idea. But to take some images from this area here always is as well a good idea. This is of course not only for walls, this is for any wood board, for any material that has a different variety of material when it comes to the edges or whatever. That goes very deep. And with deep I have in mind when a material has maybe here this kind of cutout or bumpiness, whatever, we will see a change of the material, and that needs a lot of attention. I know it's not that simple to do all the time, and that is why I'm talking about. So let's have a look to some examples. Let's start here with some reality, and to be honest, this is just facing. That is nothing that needs to be there, because this wall here was there since ever and they put it last year in front of it. It's a little box on the street, and even if all these stones have here these markings of, well, hey, we are very old, it's just all fake, and it gives away here exactly on this point. And forgive me when I rant a little bit about this, because I grew up in a construction company where we did those stuff a little bit better. And this would be here the reason why someone would have to do it again. Just like that. Put it away, start over. Not usable at all. Because something like this stays then for 10, 20 or 50 years perhaps. And as I have studied and worked in architecture more than 2 decades, this hurts my eyes, and it does as well in 3D. But I thought I don't want to complain in 3D about it. I want to complain here about reality, because this is something that stays there, and we don't have the option to just take motion blur to get it away. This will be there and we can see it, and the whole illusion goes really down when we see those areas here, and it happens so often. And when you get to observe those things, you will see this happens more than often. I'm using here not something that exists in reality, as you can see. I have faked this. I did not want to take anyone's work or so, and the truth is I have seen those things more than often, and that's not typical something from Cinema 4D. It's more when you have these fast visualization application where you just have 100 textures, you drag them on something and hope to get away with it. Maybe something that I would have done 20 years ago, to be honest. And the truth is, when you have just ready-made textures, it's really hard to get these stuff. And especially areas like this here won't work at all, or here. And you can see here already this would have fit here, but the color is a little bit different here. That looks more rosé than here. So the next part is, of course, the light needs to fit to that. That means we need diffuse light one time around, and I will discuss this later on a little bit more. Because something like this is maybe something that hurts the whole visualization, and you never get really reality into it. And of course you see these stones here with all of this stuff here and then a straight line. That's not really how it should be. But of course, I know budget and client and time and everything else. So I put this away and I put this away. This should be the case as it is supposed to be. And then we can see here those areas, and we get maybe with all the displacement, if we have created it, as well a nice lighting as we have seen it before. This is of course tons of time more spent on this small detail, and I know exactly, yes, it's not always there, but the truth is, again, if we do not prepare for these things, if we do not give reference images for such things, we never get this, because the texture creating is the first step in the whole pipeline. And what we haven't in the textures, it's really hard to get out. Of course, we can go into Photoshop. And let's have a look to that. So we have normally a wall that is built out, when I look from the top, out of bricks, and they have typically the same dimension. And then I take a brick maybe in this direction and have here again the next one. So the next row is then pretty much in this area, and I put this here a little bit to the side to make it more clear. And this one here goes now to this corner. Of course they are on top of each other, but to make it more clear. And then the next one goes here. And when I have a facing like we have discussed before, then I have here already a wall. I don't know how thick this is finally, and I do not care. And the bricks are most of the time just like tiles or half-sized bricks. And that is of course something that varies. And then we have here more or less a very thin area. This area here for the bluish one, and this for the yellow one is then only this size and this size. And this is now the example that I want to create, just the facing here, because this is more or less mostly the case when we have little areas with stone. Whole stones are different and they follow a specific structure and they have depth in it, and this depth is expressed here in this area. And I tell you all of that because in everything that we do with those materials there is a logic inside. And if you take a minute to just explore the wall or whatever there is, maybe there is natural stone on it, then how was the bricklayer able to connect these areas here, and what is his method, his art, to finally get a corner very nicely done so it doesn't look like two paper posters just glued on the wall. And this is of course a trick to simulate later on, because we don't need to make this thick here. We only have a texture that has this size here, and this is all we need. Just, and I'll use here yellow again, just a thin texture. And we have to give the illusion that we have this material here. Okay, let's have a look to one example. So this is a fast move through that example, because when I go now with each and every step we need a lot of time, but I want to give you an idea. As this is the theoretical part, this is more a discussion than a step-by-step. So lean back and show the right, and imagine that we had a little bit more space here on the start, because I had to cut it finally to get my tileable texture from it. And I had some problems here with my area that I had here. So first of all, what I did was to use the photo filter to give here a different colorization to my background. Then I took a copy of this layer and I moved it to the right. And you can see here I have a layer mask, and I masked out here exactly where this area is. And as you see as well, I have used the stones here, and you can see this when I go here to the difference. It should go on right now, that these stones are pretty much on top of each other. They differ a little bit, and my idea was here to just move one texture to the right, one to the left, and use something like this mask for it. And then I took it here to the left and I was left over with these stones. So I follow the logic of these structure here, or this pattern, and then I got here something that looks more or less like a tileable texture, except for the borders here. So I had to find where the repetition is finally, and then I had to cut it, and I have done this, of course, and the result is this one here. So now you ask, how do I got here these stones all to this line here? And for that I go now here into my source group, and you can see here they all move in different directions. So someone was here pretty fast with it, and it looks of course very natural, but not for our use here. And the simple answer is I took here my texture, and I do this here just for the example, and I took here just one row. Then I went to filter, to others, to offset, and you see immediately it jumps here. So I can adjust now this row here nicely, and as I'm here in the mortar area, I will not see any shift or so. It's pretty invisible, and that is how I did it. And so I got here now exactly always each row in the way I needed it. So I go here back to my view, and I need a little bit bigger here to show you that. I wanted to have always every second here and every other one then here, and that means I can have now here exactly the corner, the edge of my two walls where they meet. And I will show you that in Cinema 4D, because this small area here is now, as it's called, the head, the small part that looks to the wall, and this one is now the long one that is 90 degrees normally away from it. So here we have again that long one, and then we have here the little guy, and these two sides result in always into one little prick here, and it's only half in depth. So maybe I should paint this in this way. Sorry for that. So this is now here what I have always filled with color, and this one here would be then this side here where I have only my stripes in. And then I have here exactly my edge from the whole building. Let's have a look in Cinema 4D how that works. I have used here in Cinema 4D just a cube, and you can see here on the settings there's a little fillet radius in it, 1 centimeter, and only fill subdivision 2, which resulted finally that I had to change the font tag, otherwise it would have a look of a very roundish area here. And I have 3 light sources in, 1 with shadow, and then 2 for the fill light, 1 a little bit higher with a bluish tone, and 1 with a more greenish tone that comes from below. So I have here a crass reflection in the light. The whole material is pretty simple set up, and I have done here some shortcuts, so to say. I have used here my texture that I have created. I put the bump just as a noise, and the displacement I have used here the type red and green, which is normally red goes in one direction, green in the other direction for the displacement. And as I have here, and let's go here just into the view to see that more clearly, as I have here for the bricks reddish tones in it, and between these bricks not so much, I thought that's maybe a shortcut. Of course I could have created something more sophisticated for that, and then I just used here a few centimeters to get some space here from these bricks. And long story short, the texture space was here given with cubic fitting to the cube, so it's pretty much 3 times a flat. So you see here on top we have the same texture here, which is just an accident. But with the cubic I could move now here the texture in 2 directions, which I have done here. As you can see, X and C is moved, and I have done this until I reached the area that I have described before. And so I have now just these areas here pretty much folded around, and one time gives me here the small part of this facing stone and the other part then the longer one. If I wanted to have these stones always in the same length, which would be the more appropriate way, I would have the need to just cut the texture and then fill these areas here to get exactly the same length from here to here, which would be much more correct, I know. But this is a shortcut and it looks from my point of view much better than to just do anything else. Let's have a look to a rendering here. I have used here a little camera movement just to give a little bit of view to all the sides and so on. I have rendered this and you can see this. I might replace this in the tutorial later on, so I hope the speed will be not too fast. And I have, of course, another little one here where I have used a filter from Magic Bullet Looks. It's a Kodak film number 85 and it gives a different representation, of course. I stay here normally with the standards, but it's a question of taste, of course, what you prefer. And I hope this little tutorial has helped you to see how to create such areas, and always take reference images, whatever you can. It's very helpful to see how someone else has created these edges here. Thanks for listening. Have fun with it. Bye bye.